I'm Jason Solomons. Thank you so much for being here tonight at Raindance's inaugural Auteur Award, which I can't think it should, of anyone else more in the Raindance spirit that it can go to, Ken. But I do wonder, to be an auteur, since that's what we're here for, have you worked out what that is?
No. Author, I believe, as we call it in English. No, I mean, I think it's. I've always been embarrassed by that idea. I understand why it came up, because it was a stand against studio pictures that were like factory products, where every good professional had their input, but the result was kind of anonymous. And as I understand it, the idea grew up in that a film should have a single vision. And that so there should be like an author's vision of a film. But the problem with that is, well, there are two problems. First of all, it is by its nature collective. So you know there are many people involved, however you do it. But also it suggests that the director is the writer. And I think that's I think that's one of the heresies of modern filmmaking, because a writer is a different talent. You know, I mean, a good writer can write 2 lines of dialogue on a page, and the character is alive. It lifts off the page. It's a talent. And some of the best. I mean, I've had relationships. I've had. I've worked with 3 or 4 writers with whom I've absolutely been kindred spirits. And Paul Laverty for the last quarter of a century, and he's extraordinary, and that's what's kept me going, really. Very demanding he is. But so that the writing is absolutely critical. And what I think is a pity is when, and I don't know what you feel about this, Jason, is when young directors, particularly at film school, it's implied that they're not a proper director unless they write it themselves. And I think that's really wrong. I think directing is one thing, writing is another. And they need to be complementary, but they're certainly not the same. And a good dialogue between the two is really important.
It's fascinating that you say that Paul Laverty is a demanding writer of his director. There are a few directors would sort of say, well, I'm the guy in charge, but that relationship clearly, you take a lot from your writers, and not just Paul. You've taken it from Jim, yes, in the past as well. It's something that you've always relied on. I mean, have you done? How much writing do you do yourself?
No, I mean, Paul. What usually happens, we do a lot of we do like go around and do what is rather loosely called research, but it's just chatting to people and trying to work out what kind of film you want to do, and how it might center. And then Paul will write a character or 2, and then we'll see whether those characters will take us to the heart of what we want to get to, without just by telling their story. Because it's to me, it's about simplicity and economy, really. So you want something very simple and clear, that if you just tell that story, the whole world that they're in opens up. And so so that then after we've settled on that, Paul will then write a first draft, and then we knock it backwards and forwards. But the other thing where I think the sense of the author should come in is that a film should have a single vision. It should all the elements should have the same aesthetic. Because, for example, it's no good having a designer who'll make a fantastic real interior in a real location, and he'll or she will just amend it so that it works for the film, like edit the reality so that it works for the film. But looks absolutely as though you've just walked in off the street. But then a cameraman puts light in where there shouldn't be light. You know, I mean, that would kill it. So the cameraman or costume or makeup does something that counteracts the reality. Or the performances are in such a way that it's theatrical. So that there has to be a unified vision, and there has to be, and that in a way is what the director's got to do.
I'm really sensing you're about to unleash something extremely important on the British public in I, Daniel Blake. You said we thought you'd retired, in fact, at some point, and then you've come back with this. Well, I'm going to say it is one of your best films, and it's an absolute masterpiece for our times, and no one else would make it if you didn't. So thank you.
Well, thanks very much. That's really kind of you. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Paul and I, just swap stories all the time and over the phone because he lives in Edinburgh, and we found we were exchanging notes about what was happening with people being sanctioned or being past fit for work when they shouldn't be working, and the consequences, and then obviously the rise in food banks talked about earlier, and the stories just got more extraordinary. So we thought we should look into it, really. And it's a very simple film, It's a very simple one. But we heard so many stories like it.
That's what... not for a moment do you think this isn't happening. And yet, as watching it, and you'll see it, you think, well, why haven't I seen this before? Why don't I know? I know this is happening, but I'm not aware of it enough. And sometimes in your films, over the periods, we've all loved your films, but sometimes they feel that they're happening to other people. Sometimes that they're to navigators on the railways, or freedom fighters, Sandinistas. That slight distance from this one felt like this is happening to everyone in this room. There's a massive, unfortunate inclusion in this work. Is that why you were impelled to make it?
Well, I think that's. I mean, cinema can. In a way, I think cinema can just show us the world, can't it? I mean, and often cinema shows us the world that's very distant, it's very exotic. But it doesn't always show us the world around us. And I mean, I think it's just interesting. I mean, whether it's people who are richer than we are, or insights into people like us with our own lives, or whether it's people who are actually struggling, and some of it, people here may be struggling. Who knows? Because it's
they're
not
filmmakers, some of them. So yes, they will be struggling.
but I mean, it's not always apparent, I mean, people put on a facade. I mean, that's what we found when we went to food banks. Some of the people there, you think, well, look, they shouldn't be here, but actually, you hear their stories, and the effort that people make not to lose self-respect, not to look like somebody who goes to a food bank, is the most, that's the most touching things of all. We were in one food bank in Glasgow, and quite a well-dressed man was hovering outside, and the woman beckoned to him to come in, and he sort of stepped back. And then she was talking to us, and she said, just hang on a minute, I'll go and have a word. And by the time she got to the door, he was disappearing down the road. He wouldn't come in. And it's that sense of shame, isn't it, that through poverty, which I suppose we felt was important to express. I mean, one of the most significant statistics I came across over the weekend was that, yes, the unemployment figures are going down slightly, but the people of underemployed, i.e. the working poor, is now 5.5 million. And that's with people who are actually underemployed, who would want to work more but can't survive on what they're getting, so having to have their wages topped up or not topped up. But, I don't know, it's just one story.
I think you have been a politician for 50 years as well through your cinema, and you've brought politics to the big screen, but in a way always anchored it in a very human touch. You've managed to tell that tale through your characters with the empathy.
I'd say it was the other way around. I mean, I think there's, first of all, there's got to be a love affair with the medium. If you don't care for the if you see the medium as a mechanism to simply to express a political idea, then forget it. It doesn't work. You've actually got to love the medium, I think.
So you love cinema first.
Yes.
You say, yeah.
Yes, but then you've got the question: what stories are you going to tell? And then you're in the real world,
I was worried when you retired, when you sort of said you were going to retire, and then you didn't. I thought, oh, hello, he's back. If you hadn't made this film, as I said earlier, I'm worried that no one else would. Do you see other people doing what you've done over the last 50 years?
Well, I think it, in a way, Jason, you're known for the fairness of your questions, but this is a slightly unfair one on the people who would make it, because we've been lucky in that Rebecca O'Brien, the producer, and Paul and me, we've got a little niche in European cinema where if we don't spend too much, people will back us. And we're very lucky to have got there and just made the right connections at the right time. But that's our good fortune. There will be many writers, and certainly directors who would like to work in this, who are more than capable of making films that just, well, tell any stories, but I mean, certainly would tell these stories and more, and do them differently and, you know, in a different way, and bring their own perspective, and that's terrific. That's how it should be, you know. There's not one way of telling a story. But they're not commissioned. They don't get the commissions. Somebody might do a film that's roughly in this area, and then they'll get, oh, you've got to go to America now, or you've got to do this kind of film now, or you've got to do something else. And they don't pursue the same territory in this, you know, with that actually absorbs them, that shows what they can do. They're sidelined onto something else. And I think that's the problem, is that the cinema as a business doesn't see this kind of film as profitable. So people who are drawn to it will then get lured or drawn into doing something else. They're told you've got to do this for your career or whatever. And that's the problem, is that we don't have... I mean, our cinema, insofar as it is an industry, it's one that looks across the Atlantic. And directors are encouraged to look across the Atlantic, and I think that's the problem. We should look within our own culture. We should be able to sustain films made to represent our imagination, our jokes, our every kind of film, every kind of imagination, every kind of story. But let it come from our culture. It's rich enough.
I was wanting you to go there. We are sort of out of time, and I can't think of a more inspirational and rain-dancey message than that one on which to end. He has got more rain dance. He can think of another message. It's good.
First time I came to Raindance, it was really scruffy. The best. I've just been at the Momentum events in Liverpool. They're scruffy, but my God, they're so full of energy and ideas and commitment to change. And if there's one thing as filmmakers we need to do, it's to be involved in the dynamism in society, you know, to really take part in that as filmmakers, just as citizens. So here's to scruffy festivals and creative energy.
And here's to Ken Loach, ladies and gentlemen. Ken Loach. Thank you. Thank you.